Hello, everyone. Welcome. This is a fantastic panel. I have a real honor of chairing it. My name is Chris Tomas. I'm the Director of Partnerships for the Yidan Prize Foundation. This is an organization that tries to shine a spotlight on excellence in education research and innovation in practice. And here we are with some of the best educators in the world. I just want to say, when I start to think about the challenge of scaling, I read the newspapers in the morning and they're full of big problems in the world: climate change, jobs and technology, peace and security, inequality. And the statistic that stands out to me most when I think about these problems is that 85% of the young people in the world by 2050 will be living in Asia or Africa. This is the generation that is going to shape the world. And it's their education that is, to me, a sense of incredible urgency, but also incredible opportunity for those children to change the world as our parents have changed the world for us. Our panel here has not only thought very deeply about these challenges, but has done something about them. They've all produced incredible programs that have scaled. So I am excited to learn about them. We're going to talk about the conditions that allow scaling in these regions of the world, how those conditions are changing, and the strategies that people have used to do that. Now, the first thing that I always think of when I think of scaling is that we've got to address a felt need. It's got to be appeal to the intrinsic motivation of the learner, of the policymaker, of the program director. So I want to start with Joseph and ask you, what, in the region of the world where you work, what do you see as the most pressing challenges or in need of a solution? And maybe a little bit, if you want to go on, about some of the conditions for scaling and how they might be, how you think about the conditions for scaling and how they might be changing in that region.
Thank you very much. So I work in Africa, so I'll be specific to that region. When we talk about the challenges in education, particularly on the continent, it runs the gamut. There's a lot of challenges, but it can be really grouped into three categories. There is the challenges of access. There's a challenge of quality and the challenge of relevance. So when I talk about access, is that you look at numbers. There is a lot of young people on the continent, and the population is increasingly young population. The average age on the continent is 19 years old, with over 60% under 25. And so it's a huge, sizable population, and it's going to make up the bulk of the workforce in the marketplace on a continent. By 2030, by 2050 will be 1 out of 4 people on a continent in the world will be African. So if you look at those numbers, there is just no way you can create physical infrastructure to deliver education to all these people. So we need to interrogate and look at the opportunities of using technology to create access for those young people to be educated and to be trained. So that's one of the challenges, and one way we can tap into technology to address that challenge. And it's one that the foundation is currently looking at. The second is really tied into the first, is the quality. When you don't have this infrastructure and you don't have enough teachers, the quality suffers. And so in a way can we use technology to replicate or to increase the reach of good teachers to the students? And so again, technology provides an opportunity to do that. And the last one is relevance. So the relevance is where we are trying to understand what are the market needs and how do we ensure that education and training is actually preparing young people for those opportunities. And all that these are three areas in which the foundation cares quite a lot about, because it is required to address those three in order for us to implement the Young Africa work strategy, which is to ensure the young people have access to dignified and fulfilling work.
And Joseph, there are lots of, Joseph is with Mastercard Foundation. I've seen lots of great programs that you're supporting. But there are in a lot of places, there are good ideas that don't spread. So how are your ideas, what's facilitating the spread of your ideas? What's allowing you to have a big impact?
So I think one of the reason why ideas don't scale is the delivery mechanism. If you intend to be the one delivering these solutions, you are limiting the reach of those solutions. If you're working with the very people who are impacted by those solutions, then you are creating an opportunity to scale the solutions. So an example I can give you is the Center for Innovative Teaching and Learning, which is a department within the Mastercard Foundation, works with Edtech entrepreneurs on the continent. And so what we do is work with tech hubs across the continent, and these tech hubs source, incubate and accelerate Edtech companies on the continent. And so you have like a multiplying effect because you have more people who you are empowering to deliver the solutions, and that you create an opportunity to scale. Instead of saying the foundation is going to deliver the solution. And so that's the approach we use to be able to ensure that we are scaling these solutions.
And Amy is the managing partner for Imaginable Futures.
Yes, and so plus 10 to everything that Joseph just said. We also do a lot of work with youth in Africa, oftentimes partnering with Mastercard. And in addition, and I mean, it's just a massive problemtunity, if you will, to figure out how we can better break down barriers and bring better learning to the youth on the continent. But also early childhood education in Africa is a massive opportunity. In the next 50 years, 3 of 4 babies born in the world will be born on the African continent. 85% of brain development happens in the first 5 years. The way that you experience life in your first 5 years has implications for your metabolic systems, your immune systems, your cardiac systems, all kinds of things. So that's for entrepreneurs in the audience, that's a fabulous area to look at. But then just as far as context, right? The other question that you asked was, what are the kind of the contextual pieces? We, about 5 years ago, did some research on what is required for an equitable EdTech ecosystem. And we actually we've been working with the World Bank to take that and sort of make it into an index so that sort of country by country you can get a better sense of what do we need here. And so it's things like connectivity, devices, relevant content, energy, implementation, so the ability for humans to implement, because we know that we all learn in relationship, right? The best teacher is a human. Things like policy. And so that would be one thing I would say just to keep a look on, sort of keep an eye out for, is making sure that you're looking at sort of the full suite of what's required to implement EdTech with success.
And how are you finding those capacities changing in Africa?
So what we're finding is, it's not moving as fast as India. We used to do a lot of work in India. And I think frankly, just like data rates in India have moved faster than they have in Africa. And I think the biggest challenge that we have seen is a market, meaning education does not need to be, whether you're capitalist or not, you need a payer. You need someone who is going to pay. And so we are not seeing governments moving at the speed that we would like to be the payer, but it's increasing. So I would say, like, we are moving, and we're also seeing governments more open to partnership, public-private partnership across the board, recognizing that we can't do this by ourselves, but the payer piece still is a hard nut to crack.
Geetha, Room to Read reaches 32 million students?
This year, 37 million.
37.
Benefited, yes.
So that's an insane amount of people. I looked at, that's the population of about 85 countries in the world. Added up.
Well,
What are
we've
you
been
trying
around
to
for a
do, and
while.
how are you doing it? How are you reaching so many people?
But just, I guess, for context, we have a stated mission of creating a world free from illiteracy and gender inequality through education, and we do that through 2 programs. The first is an early grade reading program that focuses on both the skill and habit of reading, and the second is a girls' education and gender equality program focused on life skills development through local mentors, helping girls develop the skills they need to make good life decisions and complete secondary school. So those are the 2 areas that we're focused on, and we've been in that space for a couple of decades and have a really clear sense of what are the components that children need to succeed in terms of learning outcomes and life outcomes in both those areas. In terms of our path to scale, we work primarily in the government systems and the public school system. So what we're looking for are components of our programs to be adopted, adapted, integrated into the system as a part of the normal practice so that ultimately millions more learners are able to benefit. So as an example, in 2018, we worked with the government of Vietnam, the Ministry of Education and Training, to integrate our school library model into the national policy. And now our school library model is the primary school library model for the country. So that's success for us, and that's how we scale to larger numbers of students around the world.
And you've talked to me about the role of transparency and feedback loops, and how does that play into your scaling model?
Yeah, so we are implementers at our core. So we have an annual planning process where we implement the programs and the components. We get back assessments and data from our teams. We're about 1,600 strong staff around the world, 90% in the communities that we work with. And that data comes back to us, and on an annual basis, we look at that and see if there are changes we want to make in our design, and can very quickly and nimbly, because we're privately funded for the most part as well, make those changes and learn from them and go back into the programs the next year with those changes in place.
And Kathy, at PhET, 1.2 billion downloads of PhET by now, teaching, improving STEM education around the world. Tell us, what is PhET trying to achieve, and what has been your path to scaling?
Yeah, so PhET Interactive Simulations, based at University of Colorado Boulder, we really focus on advancing science and math by creating these highly interactive, high-quality simulations. And some of our approaches to scaling are to focus on flexibility. So we make a tool, but the learning environment is created not just by the tool, not just by the simulation, but by the teachers. We see teachers as a really important part of our scaling mechanism. So we work globally, especially in Africa and Latin America. Right now, we have a PhET fellowship program where we're training teacher leaders. These are teachers in their community. They know their context, they know their challenges, they know the learning goals that their students are trying to achieve. And so by working with this group of PhET fellows, we can train them deeply around the pedagogy and research of a PhET simulation or science teaching in general, and then they can pick those up, adapt them, and adopt the strategies we have for engaging interactive learning in their context, so they can see, what can I do if I just have a projector and a screen, like one computer, one projector? What can I do if I just have one smartphone? And they can connect with their community and make those simulations really effective in that context. Another key partner for us are the education technology companies that are actually working in those regions. So we work with Mastercard Foundation with the Edtech community that they're working with to support those Edtech leaders to integrate the PhET simulations into their products, surround those technologies, given the context of those learners, and give access to those students. We also attend to other aspects like translation. So the PhET simulations are all translatable. So language isn't a barrier. They're in something like 115 languages. We make that really easy. we're also working on localization and context, and we support offline use. So we try to be just highly flexible and focus on partnerships that can help us bring these high-quality simulations into the context where they can have the most impact.
Yeah. Maybe can you say a bit more about the variety of delivery mechanisms you have? Because I think that's really important for trying to think about how you reach less resourced people and less, different technological environments and so forth.
Yeah, so we have, of course, we're available online. You can just Google us. A lot of people find PhET simulations online, but they are all downloadable. So you can download them onto just a thumb drive. And since our very beginning in 2002, 2004, some of the educators in Africa, we were mailing CDs, and they were bringing them to the schools there to get them available in offline context. So everything is downloadable. We also have mobile apps that allow for offline use. So, and then again, the integration into the education technology companies' products. So that's another mechanism. Those are often the things that end up in the schools, whatever the government purchases. If PhET simulations are available in those in those products that are purchased by the government. And then we kind of circle back around with our PhET fellows to train the educators. Like, we can't forget about the educators. They're such a key part of the whole ecosystem. So we try to come at it from just multiple directions.
And Anant, edX, 60 million registered users.
Zero here, a zero, that's 48
More?
million.
48 million, okay.
So the approach we've taken to create impact at scale is really to use, I would say, two ideas. One is use digital platform technology. So we built an education platform called edX, where we partner with some of the world's best universities and companies. Universities like MIT and Harvard and Oxford and Cambridge, University of Cape Town, universities all over the world that create content ranging from free courses to boot camps to full degrees on our platform. And we have over 4,000 courses and programs on our platform, which we make available to learners all over the world. And so today we have over 48 million learners who are coming and learning on our platform. And if you think that only about 25% of them are from the US, 10% of our learners, you can do the math yourself, 10% of our learners come from the continent of Africa. And so, and it's not just the numbers, it's the kind of things people are learning, it's their stories. I mean, sometimes some of these stories will bring tears to your eyes. So I'm reminded of Alice from Nairobi in Kenya. So she took a course on edX from the United Nations SDG Academy on human rights and human wrongs, and she's a lawyer. And then, based on the learnings, she's now helping first-time offenders in the city of Nairobi, providing pro bono assistance and helping first-time offenders, try to get a second chance. So just examples of people all over the world that are using the learnings in a variety of ways. The key motivation the people come to edX to learn is to upskill and reskill, whether it's for professional certificate programs or boot camps or degrees. Each of these products, learning products, is that have different lengths and levels of rigor. And so they come and learn on the platform, and but these are helping people change their lives, and it's all over the world. It's also mobile. So that's one idea, learning platform. The second idea is that we know that we can't reach everybody, so we open sourced our platform. So we gave our core IP, the software technology of edX, the platform, we gave that away to the world for free. It's called Open edX. And there are 4,000 instances of Open edX all over the world where people have formed, created platforms and are doing amazing things. In fact, we're really proud of one of those interactions I'll highlight here. Give a shout out to the Mastercard Foundation and Arizona State University, where they're using Open edX and creating a campus degree platform for use in all of Africa. And it's very high quality, It's the same platform that drives edX, and it will be used. It's free, so you can download it from GitHub and become a competitor to edX using our own technology. And so those are the kinds of things that you can do to rapidly scale. One is to create a platform, and second is to create open source so that people can pick it up and then customize it for local use.
So I like the story you gave, the example. I'm wondering if anyone else would like to share an example of a story that motivates them personally or motivates their organizations. I mean, one thing I notice when I interact with any of you, there are always people on the other line, at the end of the line in your places. You have motivated staff that are working 150% to do what they want to do. How do you do that? What stories motivate them? What examples of results motivate them?
Well, I'll share a story that came from this fellowship program we have. So one of our PhET fellows, Anel Cruz Castillo, she's in Mexico, and she's a chemistry teacher by day, but she also volunteers for this program called Let's Learn at the Stoplight, where she brings education to mothers and children selling products on the street. So she uses PhET simulations to teach these children, and now their mothers, kind of the fundamentals of math, and work them up through completing their middle school degree. And in one example of success, one of those mothers, after working with her, was offered a job at one of the local cultural centers where she became an assistant to one of the children's robotics programs. So really, it's like a heartwarming story, and so we kind of are motivated by those sorts of things.
I'm happy to share one as well. One of the things I always say that we just talked a lot about all the major challenges in the world, and part of what our business is creating many more problem solvers so that the challenges can be addressed in the next generation. And one particular young woman stands out to me. Her name is Sapna. Her family came from a really remote village in the Chitwan district in Nepal. And when she was very young, her sister came down with pneumonia, and they were trying to treat her with traditional healing ceremonies and things like that, and she wasn't getting better. And Sapna begged her father, let's take her to a clinic, and finally he agreed, and they began the 4-hour journey to the medical clinic, and unfortunately her sister didn't make it, so at 6 years old passes away without medical assistance. And Sapna at that moment, a traumatic moment of her life, remembers having read a story on Florence Nightingale through her program, and she says, I'm going to be a medical practitioner. Grows up, goes through our program, builds skills like resilience, perseverance, other life skills, and ultimately becomes the first in her family to go to college, becomes a nurse, and during the pandemic, on the front lines, serving her community, even when her family wanted her to quit. They were really worried about her safety. And now her story was picked up by the Rebel Girls, sort of the multimedia empowerment brand, and they're telling her story through books. She's going to be in films. So she's going to be able to inspire, of course, young women, not just in Nepal, but far beyond that. So I think it's just demonstrative of the power of a single young woman, a single story.
Can I jump in? First I'll tell a story on the early childhood side of the spectrum. So there's an organization that we partner with called Imagine Worldwide, and they basically help bring tech-centered, student-centered learning to places where really there are no teachers, or the pupil-teacher ratio is like 100 to 1, 200 to 1. So they've been working in Malawi, and we were there visiting some of the classrooms, and so it's basic literacy in math. And I'm talking to one of the teachers saying, so what do you think? Because often you hear this idea of like, oh, tech's gonna take our job, right? This teacher looked at me with tears in her eyes and said, my students are finally getting the teacher they deserve. Because in the software, there is a woman who is dressed in typical Malawian clothes, speaking Quechua, and that's the teacher. She was pointing to this like little cartoon image. So that's one. And then I'll also just share briefly, we partner with an organization called Educate, which works primarily across East Africa, and they have identified that students who make it to secondary school are not getting the life skills that they need, nor are they getting entrepreneurship skills. And on a continent where, Joseph, you'll correct me, about 85% of jobs are in the informal sector, meaning these businesses are not registered, operating like legally with paying taxes and benefits, et cetera. So 85% of people are going to end up working in the informal sector. That means you need entrepreneurship skills. So Educate teaches, brings exactly that into the school systems, life skills and entrepreneurship skills. And there was this one guy who basically went through the program and developed a new line of soaps that have anti-mosquito, anti-malarials, and is now built this entire line of house cleaning products, is selling into commercial businesses, and hopes to be the largest kind of home cleaning products across East Africa.
Wow.
And he was from a community really far from justice and really far from economic opportunity. It's amazing.
Those are incredible stories. I'd add a couple of examples, but instead of individuals, companies. To address a point that Amy actually made earlier, somebody has to pay, right? And I think we just need to be a little bit more creative when it comes to who's paying, because the traditional payer is not stepping up to pay. So I'll give you an example. There was a company out of Kenya, actually, called Kitabu, and they came up with this idea about licensing books. So they realized that schools have problems getting enough books, and they could actually provide a soft copy of books, and then they charge a very small fraction of the price of a book. And so there is a group of families that immediately now can afford to get books that were not able to get books before. Then they realize there are still people who can't afford that. So they start renting the books by chapters. So you rent the chapter you're working on, and then when the lesson goes to the next chapter, you rent the other chapter. So that now the price becomes even like a fraction of the price of having a license of the whole book. So the parents were able to afford this. And now the company was actually making money because they couldn't get the government to actually pay the full license. And they're able to negotiate this with the publishers because the license expires at the end. When you finish the first chapter, you no longer have a license to that chapter. You go on to the next chapter if you want to still pay the same amount of money. So that's how companies are getting a bit creative in ways of actually making money. Another example with this company called Zuraki, and they have like 3 different products. They have Zuraki Finance, which the school needs to do the financing part. But with it, then they get Zuraki e-learning, which the students use for free. And then during the school, at school. But if the parents like what they see, and now they want that product for their own kids outside the school system, they pay. So local organizations are coming up with ways to actually monetize their product without relying heavily on the government. So these are some of the solutions that people are coming up with. And that's what's so important, because they especially these local companies, they do understand the reality on the ground and how to navigate it.
So what I love about all these stories is, you've all shown how you can reach some of the most marginalized people in the world. Who would have thought you can go to very rural Malawi, very rural Nepal, in very meaningful ways, and when they have the opportunity, they're using it to improve their lives and solve problems in the communities around them. It's an incredible opportunity. I don't know, anyone want to offer any takeaways from thinking about scaling or?
I would just add to what Joseph was saying. I think there are very creative solutions when partnerships are bold and big, and I think that's what we need, especially given the last few years with so many more children in learning poverty, not able to read and understand a simple text, et cetera. And we're seeing similar types of initiatives with local publishers pooling procurement, for example, with the government to bring the cost structures down to provide books to schools. Looking at delivery mechanisms. I mean, this is a tech conference, not just thinking about the internet, but simultaneously we were working through radio, television, IVR, SMS, any type of structure available even while internet access continues to become more prevalent, so that your radio episodes turn into podcasts and your television broadcast turns into YouTube, right? I mean, you've got to kind of go along with that evolution so that you're not waiting and that you're not losing generations of kids in the meanwhile.
Yeah, I think scale is one thing. The big part is outcomes at scale. You want the outcomes as well. And what we've begun doing in that area is something we call our social enterprise platform, where we work with, it's an impact partnership. So we work with communities, funding agencies, and with content providers to build these coalitions for upskilling. So I'll give you one example. So in Denver, we work with over 40 workforce agencies, and they get the funding for upskilling from the government. And then we work with the University of Denver that provide boot camps. And the boot camps, there's a lot of live learner support that we bring to the table, and the platform and all of that stuff, and the content from the University of Denver. So it's three parties, the workforce agencies, the University of Denver, and us. And together, it's like a three-legged stool. And the workforce people find people that don't have a job or need to be upskilled, and they connect them to us. And they provide the funding for the boot camps, and then we upskill them. And even people that don't have any coding experience, we can take them, the phrase they use, from zero to hero, where within 6 months, training for web development or for data science so that they can get a job. And the live learner support and services we provide is critical for a lot of the people that are not necessarily all self-motivated to learn completely asynchronously. And these kinds of partnerships that are localized are critical. And we're now scaling this across the world. We have a similar partnership we launched in Birmingham in the UK to upskill thousands of people there as well, with funding from the UK government. So I think this kind of approach with local partnerships can really create outcomes at scale.
This is kind of echoing what everybody is doing, has said here. I think the key to it's really partnership. Partnership for systemic change, right? You can do one change, but if you want to do a change at the system level, you need to partner.
Yeah.
And you need to partner, and you need to get the beneficiaries, quote unquote, to be part and parcel to the solution formulation and development. And that's why you have an active partnership, one that actually could have a lasting solution. And I think the success we're all talking about kind of illustrate that in a way, is a lot of stakeholders coming together to work together. We've seen this during COVID, for instance. We saw partnership being formed that you never thought that possible, that they would be formed in 2 years, but they were formed in like 2 months. Mm-hmm. You had telco companies reaching a deal with the Ministries of Education to make sure that all education content is zero rated. And that was done in a couple months, right? And they had been talking about this for a decade, but they hadn't reached anything. But within 2 months, when they all got together, faced with a formidable challenge, they were able to reach that. So when you bring all the stakeholders together and look and kind of create that trust, the trusting kind of collaboration, the impossible becomes possible.
So addressing that felt need,
Yes.
co-creation, and partnership, real genuine partnership. Yeah.
Partnerships with people on the ground,
Yeah.
Yes.
but you involve the people that you train, and you get them to serve as teachers now. So I think that's what it takes to localize things and get that impact.
I just want to build on what you said. I was thinking, we haven't talked yet about the potential for job creation in all of this, and how technology, so there may be some places where student-facing technology may be out of reach in the near term, but teacher-facing or caregiver-facing technology may not be so far out of reach. And we may be able to actually create new jobs in addition to helping those individuals raise our next generation of collective leaders, right? So I think of an organization in South Africa called Smart Start that has enabled 10,000 women to run their own business of childcare businesses. And they're serving over 100,000 children. So they, through technology, basically, like they've built this curriculum and they've built sort of an operating system, if you will, which have enabled these micro-entrepreneurs to open up childcare systems in their neighborhoods, in their townships. And they've worked on policy, they've partnered with government to ensure that they can get some sort of, dignified wage. And it's really amazing. And that wouldn't have been possible several years ago.
So you've all kind of hinted at ways these programs are financed. Philanthropy, business models, government. How do you see
Parent
that?
paid.
Parent paid, yeah. Do you see potential for something more self-perpetuating coming up and more sustainable in financing? Is the market changing? Is the financing landscape changing?
I think it's called using technology to make things ultra affordable. And so I think it's two things. One is, it's one thing for the government to, start funding things, but when we can use technology to make things at scale, make things highly efficient, and make them very inexpensive. So we've launched, a month ago, we launched a master's degree with UT Austin in AI for $10,000. The campus degree costs $45,000. It's 1/4 the cost. And we can do that with technology. And the goal, we already have data science and computer science degrees with them at 10,000, with 3,000 students in those programs. So we can scale and use scale to lower the cost. So that's one thing. And then the second thing is things can still cost, as you said, even with books, even if you lower the cost of books, it still costs money. And so there, I think we involve various sovereignties, whether it's governments, like in Denver, the government upskilling funds come in. In Tulsa, the similar partnership, Tulsa, it's the Kaiser Family Foundation that is funding the boot camp efforts and so on. So really the trick is to work with foundations, local universities, local providers, and platforms to pull together these coalitions to drive down the cost and to get the funding for that.
Yeah, just to build on that, in Malawi, the software that I was talking about, that was all funded by philanthropy, and now it's being picked up by government and being scaled out across the country at a minimal, it's a highly leveraged cost because of the previous upfront investment.
Yeah, our approach is similar. Initial demonstration model funded by philanthropy, and then quite successfully governments pick it up because there is quite a lot of money in the system, actually, in terms of resource allocation, just allocating it in the right way, efficiently, bringing the cost structures down. We use tech for content distribution. Indonesia is a good example. To Amy's point, students couldn't access the digital books, but teachers could. So all the teacher training is done on the digital platform, but then they can take offline copies of the books. They can project them. They can put them on the floor. They can put them on the wall, et cetera, when they need to. In the classroom. So I think that's going to be the future in terms of the use of technology. It's just making sure that we're using what's available right now, even while we're waiting for everything to catch up.
So talk to me about trust and radical transparency with your funders.
Yeah, I mean, we are 93% privately funded and at a budget of about $75 million a year and starting at zero every year. So we have to be incredibly transparent on what we're spending money on. And during the pandemic, we had to pivot just about all of our programs to a completely different implementation model. And thankfully, a lot of the funding community understood the dire straits that we were in and came along on that journey with us.
The trust part is very critical. It's not just about from a funding source point of view, but if a learner wants to join a boot camp, they don't have a job, they want to jump, they don't even know about boot camps, and they would have to spend anywhere from 2 months to 6 months to upskill. They don't want to spend the time, so they also need the trust. And the workforce counselors work with them to give them the trust that says, look, you do this, you will get the outcomes. So they do need trusted people to talk to, even for them to put their time investment into it, beyond the money.
I would add just one point on trust, kind of going back. We were talking about partnerships externally. I think organizational structures can change as well. We talk a lot about INGOs and NGOs and grassroots organizations and multinational organizations, but we can kind of move beyond those silos and look at decision makers all over the world, part of local communities that are part of management structures that are global in nature. There's a lot of more interesting ways, I think, of running big organizations if we really want to make transformative change that is inclusive of the communities that we're talking about here.
I am so sorry we're out of time suddenly. This has been an amazing panel, and I personally walk away from this very optimistic. I'm just absolutely convinced that the path to a better world is giving people, or creating an environment where people can develop the skills and the talents and the values they need to live the lives they want and to improve the world. And those conditions for creating that are improving. The infrastructure is improving, the policy is improving, the finances are improving. We have an incredible opportunity ahead of us. So I want to thank you all. And these smart strategies that you talked about, cooperation, partnership, co-creation, building trust and feedback loops is sort of the way to help these good ideas flourish. So thank you very, very much, and enjoy the conference. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you.